Okay, so everybody is considered to be recording now. If you have questions and you just don't want your voice on the video as well, feel free to just hit it up on chat, and I'll use my own voice and credit you with the question. So thank you for the patience there.
Cool. All right, so I am here. Brian asked me to speak about some open source intelligence things, and one of the things I like doing is just introducing people to a wide variety of how we use open source intelligence in several different industries. My background is a little bit in the, well, it's big into cyber, and I moved into open source intelligence. So this talk is essentially combating the oh, you do OSINT, that means you Google things, right? Now we use more than just Google. So like I said, we're going to do about 10 slides here, a little bit of an introduction, then we'll do about a half hour of hands-on. And if you have questions, like Brian said, just either speak up or go ahead and toss it in the chat there. So if you're somebody like me that grew up on the internet, you'll remember that very first page over there on the left. That's the first page on the internet. Oh, and the short URLs in each of the slides, I'm not here to attack you or give you malicious stuff. It's just a URL shortener that I have. It'll just redirect you to places, okay? Places that are on the slide. So that first website, back when I was a kid, we would take the phone line off of the wall, we plug it into our modem, and we do our things on the internet. And then we would unplug and put it back in and go and really live our lives in the real world. But nowadays, things are so much different. I mean, with the advent of our mobile devices and live streaming data all the time to and from the internet, it's a much different place. I mean, back when I was a kid, we had the mapping software MapQuest, and you could get a scanned copy of an atlas, and then you'd click the left or the right arrow, and you'd wait and wait, and then the next part of that atlas would load. Nowadays, I mean, you have these JavaScript calls that are adding the times when coffee shops are open, or places and times, the traffic that's happening along different routes on the road. It's really quite incredible the amount of information we have access to right now. And you might know some of the people out there that, well, they share a lot of information. These are the people that, and none of you would be like this, but I'm sure you know people that take a picture of their food before they eat it, then they take one bite, and then they take another picture with just that one bite out, and then that goes on through the whole meal. And each one of those pictures is being shared up to the internet, and sometimes they'll show who's around them or things about the restaurant or about who they're with, where they're with, where they are, and what they're doing. There's a lot of data going up to the internet. And you know what? Even if you are a person, I mean, you're in cybersecurity or you're learning about cybersecurity, and you might be more privacy aware and focused, so maybe you're not sharing information on the internet. But if you're here in the United States, the government, our society shares information about us. And so understanding what's out there about us can help us become more private. And also, some of the stuff out here, like here, we have the Federal Election Commission. This is the FEC's website, and all you have to do is go there and you can look up what candidates people are donating to, which in today's politically charged environment, that could be something that is very important to your work or your personal life. Now, when Brian introduced me, he mentioned, I'm going to show you things for work. Yeah, kind of. Open source intelligence goes beyond just work things. It really is about how to find information online and what you do with it. What is the analysis part of it? We'll talk about that in a second. Another thing about information that's online that's sometimes even out of our control, newsletters. I'm sure some of you belong to a religious organization or a boys and girls club or some kind of scouts or something like that. And instead of emailing you every month what's happening in the organization, they put a nice little PDF or Word doc on their website, and you just go up there and click on it. No worries. But the data inside of these is amazingly useful to people that are looking up, well, email addresses, phone numbers, whose kid. What here we have in the middle Tyler and Megan on this slide. Tyler and Megan, it has their last name, it has a bio about their family. I've seen other newsletters that tell you, births, deaths, marriages. We have phone numbers, using some really simple software that's been around in the world of Linux for years with wget and grep and some other tools. We can harvest out and it's out there. And many times it's absolutely beyond your control. Now, some of you probably are aware of these deep fake videos and images that are out there, and some of you maybe this is the first time hearing about it. Back when I was a kid, when we saw a person's picture on the internet, there was actually a person that looked like that was out there in the world somewhere or had been out there in the world. But nowadays, pictures like the one you see, the one on the left here from thispersondoesnotexist.com, are totally made up by computers. There's computers that know what a model of a face looks like, put the nose here and the eyes there and the mouth there. And then there's other computers that judge based upon and judge what the generative computers come up with. They're like, hey, is this a good picture of a face? No, the nose is in the wrong place. All right, how about this one? And what we get is these pictures of people that have never existed. And I guarantee you that as you're surfing through your Facebooks or Twitters or other things, you're seeing profile pictures of people that look like this, with their eyeballs in the middle of the screen, eyeballs lining up with the corners of the pupils, lining up with the corners of the mouth, with a blurred background, them looking straight at you, maybe to the side. These are real good telltale markers that this person does not exist. And maybe this picture was taken from the website this person does not exist.com. And these types of things are easy to fool. We can use them to fool people. I've used it myself, creating profiles on social media sites for business purposes. And you take this and you do some things to it, and there's your person's picture. Or some of you probably heard the Jordan Peele impression of Barack Obama, and then how people took his words. Jordan Peele, the comedian, took his words and put them into Barack Obama's mouth. So it actually looked like Barack Obama was saying what Jordan Peele was actually putting into the words that he was putting into his mouth. These types of fakes are out there, and they are really, really hard to figure out that they're fakes, and well, to discover why somebody would use them. When I was a kid, if you wanted to figure out what I did, what I ate, who I did it with, you'd have to dumpster dive. But nowadays, nowadays, lots and lots and lots of people are pushing this online, and it's really easy to harvest this data. Now, just a brief slide about me. As Brian mentioned, I am pretty well into open source intelligence. I run a nonprofit called OSINT Curious, which is a free nonprofit that we'll talk about in a little bit. It's got free information and educational materials about open source intelligence. I'm a consultant. I also am a SANS instructor and the author of the SANS course on open source intelligence. So one last slide, then we'll get to the demos. Open source intelligence is about harvesting information, harvesting data from the internet. You've all run Google searches in your time. You've all run some kind of Python tool or other tool that goes out there and grabs data from the internet and puts it on your system or in your browser. When you look at that data and you remove false positives, false negatives, when you look at it and you figure out, hey, is this truthful? Is it reliable? Is it from a quality source? That data turns into information. And when you take that information and you add on there your analyses of what does it mean within the scope of your assessment or your investigation, what does it mean to your customer, then it becomes intelligence. And that's what we really strive for. People say, oh, you just Google stuff. No, I Google stuff. I harvest that data. I remove anything that's not relevant through future and through additional searches. And then I figure out what that means, whatever comes back. And what does that mean to you? Well, I'm going to show you. Now, I'm probably not going to have time to go through this entire list, but I did want to give you the links to all of the things I'm going to talk about. So on the left-hand side, spotinfo.co/SeaSec. Sorry, I wanted to keep it short, so I didn't do SeaSec, SeaSec East, because that would be repetitive and redundant, right? If you go there, that's going to redirect you to my webbreacher.com website, to a blog post I just made with all of the links to all of the pages, plus some extra ones, because you're my favorite audience today. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So the first thing I want to do is show you this is the page that you'll be redirected to. This is the page that you'll get redirected to when you go to that link. OSINT Curious. If anything, my goal here today is to introduce you to the wonderful, curious, interesting, intriguing world of open source intelligence. Many people call this reconnaissance or, well, Googling, but there's so much more out there than just running Google queries and looking on Facebook, and there's interesting stuff. If you're interested in it, going beyond that, well, OSINT Curious website is a great place. It has blogs. We have these 10-minute tip YouTube videos that teach a lot of what I'm going to be teaching you here today, or talking about today. First resource on our list is osintframework.de. osintframework.com, which many of you are aware of, is a framework website that has a whole bunch of bookmarks by Justin Nordine. Now, Justin's site's good and all, but osintframework.de is this Start Me bookmark page that is made by Bruno Mortier over in Europe. And the reason why I say osintframework.de is the one site that you should remember for all of the links is that it'll redirect you to Start Me, and then right here in the middle of the page, there are literally links to osintframework.com and a whole bunch of other places to go. What this site and these other sites do is essentially they categorize URLs. So if you have an email address, a license plate, a plane, a Bitcoin address, or whatever, you can come here and go, okay, Bitcoin, and then you can get a whole bunch of different websites you can go to perform further research on that bit of information. So this is a site for you to go to other sites to do your open source intelligence, or let's face it, I mean, within the realm of what we do today, when we're dating, when we're looking for a new job, when we're hiring somebody, if you have the legal ability to do so, we do lookups on them. We do searches, and these sites can help you go beyond just Googling it. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about just Googling it is that I never just Google it. I'm always using multiple search engines. The reason? Well, because of these robots.txt files. I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger for you. Robots.txt files. If you're a graybeard like me, and I'm pretty gray here, you'll know robots.txt from 20, 30 years ago. Robots.txt is a file that sits at the root level of most domains. Here I'm at cnn.com/robots.txt. And what it does is it says, for those spiders out there, those web crawlers, where can they not go within this site? This is usually put by the system administrator, the web server administrator, and they say, listen, all web spiders, Google's web spider, Bing, Yandex, DuckDuckGo, don't go into these directories. We see the user agent here, star, says everybody cannot go into these directories. So if you are looking for something in the, well, /AOL directory here within cnn.com/AOL, you're not going to find anything in Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Yandex because they've been prohibited They've been prohibited from going in there. This is kind of a light agreement. There's nothing really that stops them from doing this. They could harvest the data, and we do have ways of harvesting it, but this is like a gentleman's agreement to, okay, I won't go in there. But if we look at these, we can see that there may be interesting things, right? From a perspective of what's on this site, here I have a bunch of directories that may or may not exist. The AOL directory there, that just might be a leftover from 20 years ago. And nobody told CNN, hey, you got to remove that AOL thing. We don't do that anymore. Or there might be some people that still visit that because they still are using AOL. This information can help us find places on the websites that are not going to be found in search engines. Let me also show you a reason why we use multiple search engines. You might have heard of this company. It's called Apple.com. Yeah, I'm sure some of you have heard of it. Well, let's take a look at what's in Apple's robots.txt file. You see the user agent starts as all those Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Yandex. You can't go in these directories. All right, no worries. Well, let's scroll down and we see a specific spider called out, Baidu spider. Now, some of you know that Baidu's over in Asia. So what Apple's doing is saying, listen, Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, Yandex, you can't go in these directories, but Baidu, you can't also go into /MacBook Air. So if your favorite search engine is Baidu, guess what you're not seeing? Content in the MacBook Air directory. And this gets even more exemplified when we look at places like Instagram. You've heard of Instagram, right? Instagram, some of their content is found on search engines. We could see here Applebot, Baidu Spider, Bingbot. They all pretty much look identical, right? Like somebody copied the disallows and just added a specific bot. But watch what happens when we get down to a special bot down here. Oh, just past it. Do you see Google? They have an allow. So Instagram is saying, everybody, you can't go in these directories, but Google, come on in. We're going to give you special access to even more information. So if you were one of those privacy focused people and you always use DuckDuckGo, guess what you're not getting? Some data that Instagram is specially allowing Google to harvest. These types of files are out there and we can see them and we recognize, well, we need to change how we look for things on the internet. I always use DuckDuckGo as my primary search engine, and then I also use Google as well. And sometimes I'll use Yandex or Baidu or other ones. All right, so you get that. Let's shift focus, because one of the things that people do in open source intelligence is we look at social media. Now, social media from our perspective is interesting. Personally, I like geolocation and social media, places where you can go and see people in this area are sharing that data. And for that, we're going to head over to the Snapchat Snap Map. You can, without an account on their system, go to maps.snapchat.com and pull up whatever part of the world you want. I warn you, turn down the sound on your computer before you do that, because sound will play. And I've gone to some places and it's like a protest or a riot, and I forgot to turn down my sound, and my family's like, "What's happening in there?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a riot, dear. Riot. Everything's fine." Um, but here, what we have is social media posts that people are making. Snapchat in the normal way is, if I wanted to send Brian something on Snapchat and we're both on it, I'd take a picture of myself and send it to him, and then he'd look at it, and in 10 seconds it disappears, and he could send one back to me, or a little video. But what we see here are times when people have taken pictures or short videos, and instead of sending it directly to a person, they've posted it to the internet and said, hey, post this to my story and make it public. So if I did, and I'm going to take the risk here, you never know what people share on these. I was in Vegas one time, and you know Vegas, it was not very good. So I'm hoping that Seattle is a little bit more tame. Okay, water, I can deal with that. Um, so we're seeing clips that people have taken and shared within a certain area. And in fact, let's do this. Let's zoom in a little bit farther. The redder an area, the more posts are there. So here we have a very big red area. Here we see a person, just a snap. Okay, cool. Here we see some other people, not social distancing, but they look to be on a boat. So you're probably wondering, why the heck does this matter? Well, think about this. Some of the other places where people are sharing content are over here, maybe in areas where there's office buildings and things. Maybe people are using drugs inside of their vehicles and they're showing it, because you will see that stuff all the time in here. Maybe people are taking snaps of search. One of the things that we always get are usernames. Usernames are something that is really interesting to me. My undergraduate degree is in psychology, and I love the psychology of open source intelligence or human behavior and the internet. Um, Usernames are neat because we many times will reuse usernames across different websites. And because of that, if I get your username, I can plug it into a tool like the What's My Name.app site here, which you probably have not heard of. It's a website that a guy over in Australia named Chris Poulter created based upon work that I and some other people have worked on. And what we essentially have is over 240 sites that we can say, yeah, you give me a username. Well, let me show you. Um, let's go ahead and search for the Dread Pirate. Now, before you do the search, I just want to point out one thing. This is going to, from your computer, make web requests to over 240 different sites. And it'll put the word Dread Pirate in a URL for Instagram, well, twitter.com/Dread Pirate. Based upon what comes back, it'll say, yes, that's a good name, or no, that's not a good account there. All right, so that's what it's going to be doing, but it's going to do it from your computer. The reason why I bring this up is that right now, by default, all sites are going to be checked. You'll notice the second entry there is all exclude porn. You might want to do that if you're using a work VPN or doing this from work. I'm going to go ahead and choose all except porn, because the reality is that we know that people will go ahead and use the same username on twitter.com/fuzzybunny123, and then they'll take that same username and use it on some porn site or some sexual fetish website. One of the things that we do within open source intelligence is risk assessments of people. We have a high value target. We have a CEO, a president, a sheik. If they're using the same usernames here as they are over there, we'd want to know that. And that's why this tool will make your computer check those sites. Well, actually, Mark, it's both. It is lack of human creativity, but so it's laziness, but it's also poor OPSEC. Best thing to do is create a work and a personal persona that you use in those situations, and then in other situations, go by a different moniker. Over in certain areas, I'm known as Brian Break. No, sorry. Didn't mean to reveal myself there. But let's take a look at some of those results. All right. So these are the results that come back. Now, we're constantly revising this website so that at the bottom, I think it's going to have an export button, and you're going to be able to export all of the sites that were found. If we mouse over this, we see lo.co at the very bottom of the page, /Dread Pirate. Here's GitHub. And all we have to do is really click on one of these. I'm going to go ahead and choose chess.com. And when you click on that, you go to the Dread Pirate Roberts account on chess.com. Now, this site only checks 240 sites where the username Dread Pirate is in the URL. If that username is not in the URL, or they do some of the weird stuff where they change your username into a user number, this is not going to work. But I bet some of you are running it on yourselves right now. and it might show you some interesting places that you didn't know that your data is at. So I knew it was after 5 p.m., so I figured maybe we'd talk about beer. Because, I mean, that's a social media thing, right? You have the Untapped beer drinking site. Untapped, if you don't know, is an app that you can put on your phone, and you can then sign up for an account. You take a picture of a beer. You're like, oh, I just drank this beer, and then you post it on the web and you say, I drank this beer, it tasted like oats and honey or whatever it is, and I drank it at this location with these people and at this date and time. And I don't know if any of you know Phil Hagen, the SANS instructor. He loves beer. And so this 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 app, Untapped, Phil would constantly be posting to his Twitter, hey, I just earned a badge for drinking the most porters in Singapore. And I said to him, I was like, Phil, why are you telling me your drinking behavior? That should be private, right? He said to me, he says, like, so what's the worst that somebody can do with it? I took that as a challenge to be accepted. So I did. So let me just briefly show you how Untapped works, and then I'll show you what I made. So Untapped works, and some of you might have an Untapped account. Sometimes I will ask for audience participation. If you have a public Untapped account and you want me to do some live analysis of it, I'm happy to do so. All I need is a username. In fact, if your boss or a neighbor, they use Untapped and you put their name in there, I won't know it's not you. Come on. So the way that Untapped works is everybody has a username. I'm just going to go ahead and pick up a random person. I'm just going to a brewery and we'll show you how it looks. Here we have recent activity. Louis, we have Jason drinking a certain beer at this place, Holiday Inn Resort Bar Harbor, Acadian National Park. This is the neat thing about Untapped is that it actually will help people identify where you currently are. Hey, normal people don't go to the Holiday Inn Resort in Bar Harbor in Acadian National Park. You don't just go, hey, honey, let's stop there. They look like they have good beer. You're probably staying in that hotel, right? So if we know where you are and we know when you're there, that's interesting. And people in open source intelligence, we collect this and we go, okay, well, at this date, at this time, he was logging a drink at that place. Well, let's take a look and see how many beers. Ah, wow, that's great, Louis. Okay, well, let's just do Louis or Louis. Louis in Greater Montreal has logged over 9,600 beers. We see this right here. Now, I say logged because we have no idea if Louis, I'm going to call him Louis. It's probably Louise. If Louise hacks, I said it, whatever. We have no idea if he actually drank any of these beers, right? I mean, this is social media. People lie on the internet. So we say that he logged those beers. Let's take a look at what we see here. Now, first we have the drinking activity. He's drinking this by these people at that location. And then down here we have 2 minutes ago. All right, so he's drinking right now, or he's logging previous drinks right now. And we have another one. Oh, it looks like it's at the same place, right? So he had a sap by Treehouse at this place, and then he had a Julius by Treehouse at that place. Okay. So he looks like oh, and there's another one. So we have that information about what he's doing. We also have the top beers. We have the top places where Louis has drank. We also have the friends. We have a list of the friends. So these social media networks are amazing if we're researching a person. Here we have other people he's connected to, and you can see there where they've identified where they are and more. So let's just take the username here, Luis in QC, and go to hang on, there we go. Let's go to the Untapped application that I made. Actually, I didn't really make this. I made a Python script, and then some people way smarter than me made it into a web app. Now, this is the Untapped meetup.osint.ninja link. It'll redirect you here to Brandon's website, Brandon Evans. And all you have to do is take a untapped account, you paste it in here. Let's see if this works. Paste it in. Now what's happening is my computer right now, my web browser is reaching out to Untapped and it's grabbing his friends. It's grabbing his drinking activity. It's grabbing the top places where he drinks. And because I've added a Google API key over here for geolocation, it should have plotted all of the places that he said he drank on a Google map. Let's see if it worked. So here we see the total number of beers, which we actually saw in his profile. Here we see his recent activity. Okay, yep, you can see he's actually drinking. Hang on, there we go. We can see he's actually drinking right here a number of beers or drinks at this local place. And then here we have venues. Now we can sort this by the number of check-ins. That's how many times he's actually checked in there. We see Untapped at Home as the number one. When people stopped traveling due to COVID, uh, Untapped created a location of at home when that's where he logged most of his beers recently. Makes sense. But we do see some over here that have been geocoded because I do have that Google API key. Let's take a look. These are the beers that he's drinking. I don't care about that, but can you tell me where Luis lives or works? Probably, right? I mean, based upon this map, I can zoom out. The only places where he has logged these 9,000 beers is in these locations. And we do have one down here, but let's just see if we can really drill down here. I'm just zooming in on the red. The more red, the more drinks. 15 beers at El Patio, okay. Up here, we see some locations. 13 beers there, okay. At the local 0004 or 004. So using this information, we can figure out by harvesting all of those individual records of I drank here, I drank there, I drank here at this date and time. We can kind of map out where a person lives, works, where they frequent for their drinking. I have another one over here that you ever watch those baking shows where they're like, we're going to take the cake and put it in the oven. Oh, look, there happens to be one fully baked right in the oven. Well, I fully baked this one earlier. This is of a user named Mogford. And Mogford, well, let's just take a look at where Mogford might live. Hey, look at that. Now, I do a lot of work. I do a lot of demos with this tool, as you can probably imagine. And we can see that Mogford has some traveling that he's done in the Cancun, Mexico area, Dominican Republic. But gosh, there's a big, big orange area over here, right? Let's head up to Portland. All right, hang on. There we go. This is Google Maps, as you probably are aware, and we can just zoom all the way in until those businesses show up. There we go. Lewitt Brewing Company, 2 beers. Ooh, maybe not that big of a deal, but if we were trying to figure out where this person was, some of these places would be where we looked. Now, the other thing that we can do with this behavior is analyze the days of the week when this person drinks, the hours of the day that they drink. Now, this is localized to the person's phone. So, wherever he is, he's a nighttime drinker. All right, at least the last 25 beers that he logged. What if this was 10 a.m. till noon? That would be kind of interesting. And your boss pulls up maybe your profile and looks at it and goes, hey, aren't you supposed to be working from 10 to 12? It's real easy to see these patterns. Also, this looks like a hand pointing, but really this is the number of drinks that he's done on individual days. So the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th of this month of August, he drank a lot of beers. And because he drank more than 5 drinks on those days, or on at least 3 days, he may have a binge drinking problem, according to the National Institutes of Alcohol and Drug Abuse. So this kind of information is interesting to me. And it's how we track people. People don't realize that every little bit of information that they provide to a site, if it's public, can be harvested and then analyzed. One of my Sec 47 students, the OSINT class I teach, one of my students said, "Well, this is neat and all, but can you track the people that come to a bar? So instead of looking at a person, can you look at everybody that logs drinks at a certain bar?" I said, "Yeah." So I wrote another computer program that does the same thing. It's a Python script. And since November, I've been watching over 75 international airports because people drink in airports. I figured that out, right? People drink in airports. And what I can do is with this database of information, I have over 13,000 records of people drinking in airports since November. It takes into account all of the COVID related times when there's no airport traffic. We can see less. We also can see a person go from this airport to that airport, wait a week, and then from that airport back to this airport. We can track people. And then if we need to know what hotel they're staying at, we look at their individual drinking behavior and we see, oh, the Holiday Inn Express in Reno, California, or Reno, whatever, Nevada. This is interesting stuff, I think. All right, so let's go ahead and switch gears for a second. Let's switch gears and talk about passwords. All right, because some of you are like, okay, social media, we get it, Micah. Social media is fun and all, but I'm a really secure person. Cool, cool. Let's talk about a different way that we in open source intelligence world might use things like breach data. Now, breach data, in case you don't know about it, is when somebody breaks into a computer, usually a server on the internet, grabs all of the usernames, passwords, email addresses, and maybe more information, and then releases it out there into the world. Bad people or people with bad intentions grab that information, and then they might go, oh, look, John Doe at example.com's password on that site was password. Let me see if John Doe at example.com has has an account on Facebook, and I'll try password, or Twitter password, because people reuse not only usernames, but we know they reuse passwords as well. Heck, some of you might reuse passwords. So these breach data dumps are very important to our work because we need to find out what is out there about the people that we are trying to protect. One of the things that happened recently was, or not recently, but is still going around, are these phishing emails that have been sent out. The phishing emails say essentially, hey, you don't know me, but I know you. You were on a adult website, a porn site, and I hacked your computer, turned on your webcam, and I have video of you doing whatever it is you do in front of your computer while you're watching porn. And to prove that I'm not lying, here's your password. And all they're doing is grabbing some of that dumped password data, taking your email, taking that password, and using that password as a trust gainer for them to gain your trust and go, oh crap, that is my password. Maybe they have been a video of me. Oh no. And they've actually had instances where people have paid these attackers. I had a person that came to me and said, hey, listen, these people want money from me. I just don't know how to wire it. Can you help me? I'm like, whoa. They don't actually have video of you. Let me show you. So I took their name. I'll go ahead and put their name in here. What? It could happen. This is Have I Been Pwned. It's a foundation and a project set up by Troy Hunt over in Australia. Great project. When there are data dumps out there, they grab the data that's dumped, take the email that might be in those records, and say, this email is found in that dump. And then they'll tell you about what else was in there. So this information is out there and it doesn't show you exactly what's in the dump, but it will let you know if your account's been found in those dumps. Here we see obviously not my account, Obama at whitehouse.gov. Is this Barack Obama's account? Probably not, as you'll see, but it is people that have used Obama at whitehouse.gov on websites. There are many websites out there that don't validate and verify your email. They just say, what's your email? Obama@whitehouse.gov, and they never send that verification email. So it could be a valid username on certain sites. And as many of you know, you just scroll down. You see it was found in Discus here in Dropbox in mid 2012. Dropbox suffered a data breach, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't give us the data. Well, what I want to show you now is a paid tool that I have access to that we can pull up that breach data. We can pull up the username and the password. And let me show you how we use breach data, one of the ways. So I'm going to go ahead and type in, this is dhash.com, paid tool. Before you go ahead and start, before you go ahead and maybe start doing things with breach data, make sure you're legally allowed to. There are places in the world where it's illegal to pay for access to stolen data. You know, you think about it. If I said, hey, I got this laptop here, right? And I'm going to let you use it. You know what? Why don't you pay me for you to use this laptop? You'd be like, oh, no, I'm not going to pay you to use a stolen laptop. But here we have stolen data, and I'm going to pay somebody else for access to it. Similar, little different. Make sure that you're ethically, morally, and legally allowed to use this, especially if you're doing this for work. I'm going to go ahead and show you that Obama@whitehouse.gov. I'm going to put it in quotes here, Obama@whitehouse.gov. And of course, Cloudflare protects this. Let's go ahead and hang on. Because I haven't done stuff and I'm using a VPN, they're like, whoa, we need you to solve it. Oh, no CAPTCHA. I love that. Oh, that wasn't it. Hang on. Obama. All right, so the easiest way to actually look at this data is just by searching for an email address or a person's username. You'll find stuff. Here we have Obama@whitehouse.gov. This is share this, collections, and we can see that in the collections data, Obama@whitehouse.gov had the password of 123456. Probably not Barack or Michelle or anybody like that. But let's see if we can look up that Dropbox. I'm going to go up here and just type in Dropbox. All right, here we have Obama@whitehouse.gov, source from Dropbox. This is a hashed password. Does anybody know what's the quickest way to crack a hashed password? Quickest way. It's unsalted. So what's the quickest way to crack an unsalted password hash?
Rainbow table.
Yes. Yes, Brian, that's exactly right. Most people are like Hashcat or rainbow tables. No, you just Google it because Google knows everything. So we just paste that in and, Now this password hash does not have any salts. Back in 2012, Dropbox wasn't using salts. That randomness that would make every single hash of a password unique. This pastebin post is to the original post and it's since been removed. So what we essentially have is a password hash that has not been publicly cracked. So it's probably a pretty secure password, right? It's probably like horse battery correct stapler or whatever. I can never remember like exactly what that is, but it's like a very strong password, and that's great. Unless that becomes a moniker of itself, a piece of information that we can go ahead and search on. So we have Obama@whitehouse.gov has this specific uncracked password. So let's see if we can just paste that uncracked password into the breach data and see if we find other accounts that also might have that uncracked password. And sure enough, look at this, sourced from Dropbox, sourced from Dropbox, sourced from Dropbox. We've got a whole bunch of other accounts that have that same hash. Huba, right there, same hash. Hannibal@cannibal.com, okay, there's that hash. Now, what you're also going to notice is that the email addresses get weirder and weirder, right? Frodo at, I can't even say that, Polgar Gino. Here, this looks like somebody just smashed on the keyboard right here, right? Oh, Bill Gates at Microsoft.com. Come on. Bill Gates, and we also know that Microsoft's email address isn't Bill_Gates at Microsoft. What is this? How about Bruce Willis at Hollywood.com? They all have the same password? Nah. What it probably is one actor signed up for a free account, knew that Dropbox wasn't validating addresses, and was like, well, here's Hollywood.com. Yeah. Ooh, and you know what? I'm going to use my super secret password because I can remember that. And because they use that super secret strong password, they have tied all of these accounts together. They probably put 2 gigs worth of malware or pirated videos or something like that on one of these accounts, then use that same password, different email, to put 2 more gigs in the next one, and so on. And so what we can do is use passwords and password hashes to tie together seemingly unrelated accounts. Cool, right? Well, let me show you something else. One last thing. I don't speak Russian, but I know a really strong Russian password. Password in English is pretty strong, right? So we're going to try parole, which is copy, which is Cyrillic for password, or it's Russian for password. What I just want to show you is that even people in other countries, if I put the Cyrillic in there, even people in other countries have crap passwords. Here we have people with email addresses from at yandex.ru, mail.ru, and sure enough, oh, this is really strong. Sorry, here. Here we have that email address and parole. That's 4 passwords. Really long, not really good password. But we can break out of the English mindset. I don't really speak other languages out there, but when I'm doing OSINT, sometimes I'm going to need to think about who my target is, what their background is. If I have a target that speaks Arabic or speaks Hebrew or speaks another language, Korean, I might need to try passwords or try usernames that have those character sets in them, and maybe find my targets. Now, I have a lot more things that I could do, but I do want to be cognizant of time here. And I want to answer any questions that you have, or any questions that you well any questions that you have for me about OSINT or whatever. Oh, before I do that, just closing this up, I do have a couple of slides. As I mentioned, OSINT Cure is 100% free, no strings attached, just good quality OSINT information. And it's data that's not just made by me, it's made by really smart people that are luminaries in the field of open source intelligence. We have a biweekly webcast podcast. We use Zoom every 2 weeks. We get on there and we record a webcast, and we allow a studio audience, and people can come ask questions. We throw that on YouTube, so we have 40 or so different webcasts, and we're online. If you have questions for me, here's contact information about my class, about my nonprofit, about my company, about me. Does anybody have any questions?
Didn't Have I Been Pwned got pwned?
Yeah, they did have a security issue, but it wasn't. I don't think it was fatal. It wasn't a, hey, everything's been taken. But I mean, you think about what information they have. They essentially have public data that's been aggregated, and the passwords are not attached to the email. So, okay. I mean,
Yep.
it's valuable in case you were able to implant malware on their web page, because a lot of people visit it. But yeah, they did get pwned.
So, what's the end game if you're collecting all this OSINT? Are you doing it because you're trying to make sure your employees aren't binge drinking on work hours, or trying to find out if they're a good hire? I mean, sometimes that's illegal, but I mean, what would be the end game for collecting this kind of OSINT?
Yeah, great question. So it depends. And every single investigation, or most investigations, are different. I've done work for more mergers and acquisitions where one company is buying another company and they want the verification of what assets are online by a company. I've done missing persons cases where employee doesn't show up to work. They're not answering their phone or their emails. Where are they? Looking at social media. Done work with IP addresses and domain names, looking up those for cyber threat intelligence, trying to figure out attribution. But there's also other things with troop movements, with COVID and other things that are happening in the world, which places are actually abiding by the rules of the quarantine and things like that, and which places are not. We can literally create a fenced off area and see what's happening in a riot, in a protest, just in an area. We can see live video of those areas as well. There's a huge number of reasons why people use open source intelligence. Penetration testers use OSINT before an engagement. They call it recon. They don't call it OSINT necessarily, but they're looking up targets. They're finding data on their targets before they actually go ahead and launch their attacks. So it really depends on what your goal is for the investigation, and then you go and do the investigation.
Very
Brian,
nice.
one that I thought was really insightful was a company was advertising job openings for a specific type of technology, and that unwittingly tipped their hand. They were, if I remember correctly, they were hiring mobile developers, and they're a media company already, but they had a contract that was about to expire with a distribution company, and it looked like they were probably getting ready to do their own distribution through their own mobile app, and that did later turn out to be true. But it took people, industry analysts trying to figure out, but this is novel for this company, and how do we tie that back to their business?
Yeah, there's a lot of that public information that just depends on what you're looking for. There's another story that I tell in class where a colleague of mine was looking up the public shareholder documents that companies have to submit to the Security and Exchange Commission, that they're publicly collected. So he was just reading through this document. And in this shareholder report, they actually said, hey, we were able to pay for the new CEO's sign-on bonus by letting go of 900 employees. It's like, wow, that's incredibly bold to put in there. But looking at job postings, looking at Glassdoor and seeing what people are saying about the companies and revealing, a lot of it's out there. And OSINT is about harvesting that data and then answering some question.
I wanted to ask, how long have you been doing this, and how did you get into it?
So the quick story is my undergraduate degree is in psychology, and then I went into medicine, and then into IT, and then into cyber, and I've been doing cyber for about 20 years, and then the last probably 6 or so I've been doing OSINT. So doing actual OSINT and cybery things for about 6 years, and cyber for longer than that.
And it's the cybery things that led into OSINT.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, that was the second part of your question.
Yeah.
So what I found is that, I've been drawn to certain things. When I was doing network management, I was a Linux system administrator, just a admin, and then I was like, ooh, I took this SANS class and I was hooked right there. I was like, wow, look at all these cool things I can see and do. And then so I was like, I need to go into security, and then in security I went into pen test, and then in pen test I always gravitated towards web and always loved web hacking, and then I remember towards the end of my web hacking days, I was really interested in that reconnaissance and just the power in it. I remember one engagement where before we had to actually exploit some web application, we always did the reconnaissance. We Googled it and all, and I literally Googled the name of the application that was public on the internet, and I came up with like some help document, and I downloaded and read the document. I know it's not something we normally do, but I was getting paid to do it. So I read the document, and it said, if you want to log into the application, use a username like this or a password like this. I was like, well, I want to log in. So, and sure enough, it allowed me right in, and it was like a domain admin account. I was like, this is so powerful. This is awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah.
This has been fascinating.
Cool. There's a lot more of really neat stuff out there, either on my webbreacher.com site, although that's mostly hacking and stuff. On the OSINT Curious, there's a ton of really interesting stuff.
Cool. Okay. Any other questions from our audience to Micah? It's, you know, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, on the topic of like looking up breach credentials and the like, there's another website that seemed really popular that got taken down in January or seized by the FBI, WeLeak Info. I just am curious on your thoughts on, how a site like Dehashed might still be sticking around while a competitor, I guess, is not. Like, what are your thoughts around that? Like, do you feel like those services should be taken down, or are they beneficial for people like us enough to outweigh the bad?
So it's a very complicated issue in my mind and in the community. Legally, you look at it and go, they're selling stolen data. That should be pretty cut and dry. But the reality is it's more complicated than that. My personal opinion, as a longtime pen tester and cybersecurity person, the attackers have this data. When these breaches come out, even before the breach data comes out, this information is being shared on closed groups and forums on bulletproof hosting in faraway places that we can't serve subpoenas or warrants on. It's in the dark web and other places. So they're using it. What I'm doing is I'm using it in a productive, constructive way that's probably even better than them. And like I told you earlier, with the story of at least one person that came to me and said, hey, I'm being extorted because they say they had video of me. I was able to easily say, they don't have video of you. This is just the password that was in that breach. I bet they emailed that address, right? And sure enough, it was. So having this and using this in professional ways, ethical ways, I think is very important, so that we can stay ahead of the attackers.
Cool.
Yeah, I like that point that you mentioned where, that data's out there, right? People are already, the bad guys already have access to it. So yeah, this makes it, I guess, more easily available, but in that sense, it means that we can all be educated on what's out there, and it's right there at our fingertips. So if we want to ignore it and look the other way and not change our passwords or adopt strong password hygiene or good password hygiene, that's on us.
Yeah, and the reality is that there's a ton of free websites, intelx.io, intel, the letter x.io. You can type in an email address and it'll show you a bunch of breaches where that content was, where that email might have been, and for free. So the thing that we get by using somebody else's data is, one, I don't have to download the data, which usually sometimes comes with malware. I don't have to normalize it, make it easy to search. I don't have to do all that. I know a lot of cybersecurity people. I know a lot of cybersecurity people that grab those dumps, and they have local repositories or Elasticsearch or whatever that have terabytes full of dumps from many years. They're just not using somebody else's server for it. Mark, you asked about Trace Labs. I love nonprofits that use open source intelligence for good. For those of you that don't know Trace Labs, they're a nonprofit up in Canada, and they run monthly Capture the Flags, where they work with law enforcement and get the names and information from people that have gone missing and who have cold cases. So the cases are not being worked. They take those details, they put it up into essentially a game system. They allow you and me and other people in the world to try to find little tips of data, and submit it to try to find the person, find the last people they were with, and that. And it's absolutely fabulous because that data is then collected, validated by judges, and then given right to the police so that the police can follow up with the people that are missing. There's other ones that use OSINT too. The Badass Army is a nonprofit with non-consensual pornography and Innocent Lives Foundation as well.
Hey, Micah, is that the missing person CTF? Is that done by Trace Labs? We had Joe Gray on here probably 2-3 months ago talking about something similar. I didn't know if that was ran by
Yeah,
Trace Labs.
they've rebranded it. It's no longer called the Missing CTF. It's called the OSINT Search Party because you're going out and doing like a physical search party,
Okay,
but you're doing the OSINT. Yep, it's the exact same event.
right on. Okay. And Mark also asked where he could get an OSINT shower curtain. Is that something you can get on your site or?
That's right. So the reason why I have the shower curtain is because the previous owners of my house loved mirrors. Don't judge me. Don't judge. The previous owners of my house loved and there's mirrored doors right here. So if I pull this curtain back, you're going to see me looking at you, looking at me, looking at you. Inception will happen, and then we'll all it'll be terrible. So
50
this is
Shades
for
of
your
Micah? Is that
protection.
what it's 50 Shades of Micah? Is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But yes, this is for sale on our Redbubble site. You can buy on your site.
Nice.
And yeah, Mark, SANS is partnering with Trace Labs. If you've ever taken a SANS class, you can participate in not this week, but next week's CTF. That's a search party CTF. But if you've never been a SANS student, well, just wait till September. They'll have another global one where like 600 people this past month participated to find information about missing people. It's amazing, amazing stuff.
Any other questions for Micah? Okay.
Yeah, I'll jump in if I can, Brian.
Sure, Mark.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Micah. That was great. So basically, like this is, we find ourselves in the same place: education, education, education. Like, who, in your opinion, is best suited to provide the appropriate education? Who has the access to these people? Who can be seen as a trusted voice with regards to folks proactively protecting themselves and thinking twice before they actually put this information out there? I mean, I know that flies in the face of human behavior, but still.
No, I mean, honestly, that's one of the things that I try to do. I talk to high schoolers and I talk to teachers and parents trying to, like you said, if I increase their privacy by helping them understand how we use data, then I decrease the amount of OSINT that I can find about them. And if I, decrease their privacy, then I increase what I can find. The kind of the counterpoint, if I had to pick somebody or a role that was the opposite of OSINT, it would be somebody in security awareness. Lance Spitzner, securing the human, those type of people are out there trying to say, use stronger passwords. Although we just saw that using a stronger password is not necessarily great when there's a breach. But they're the ones that are trying to increase privacy. I'm the one, and people in OSINT are the ones that are trying to, take advantage of the fact that people don't or platforms don't secure data.
So I just wanted to chime in with something on Trace Labs. They've been running their OSINT CTF for missing persons at B-Sides Portland the last couple of years, and they have found people each year and reconnected them with families. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Well, Micah, unless we have any other questions, I think we should probably let you go. It's about 11:15 p.m. your time, and appreciate you coming and speaking to the other side of the country. And feel free to come back anytime. We would enjoy getting more information about OSINT or something. So SANS, what's SEC 487 or 478? What is that at SANS?
487. Yeah, so I didn't want to do like a pitch or promo or anything, but the class I teach, the SEC 487 class, is a 6-day class with over 23 different labs. And it's the beginner's guide to open source intelligence. We talk about how to set up a system, to social media, to people search engines, to dark web. And we cover a whole bunch of stuff within about 6 days.
Cool. Okay. Right on. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again, Micah, for coming. And we'll hopefully get you on the show soon, because I'd love to be able to talk some more about the OSINT related stuff. It's something that I think a lot of people find interesting, and you can't get enough of it. There's always new and exciting ways of finding information about people. And, you know, we didn't even scratch the surface about involuntary sharing, where you've got family members tagging you on Facebook stuff that you want to be tagged on. And it's like, well, you know, as hard as you try to be secure, you've always got grandma saying, oh, here's little Billy, you know, we're doing, I don't want to be tagged over there or something like that. So yeah, it's important to do that and to know that kind of stuff. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, SeaSec East. I've enjoyed speaking with you. And please hit me up. You got my email, you got my Twitters, my direct message, my DMs are open.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Micah.
Awesome, Micah. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Thanks, Micah. All right, I think we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll get Duane started.
All right.
So I didn't want to say anything when Duane when Micah was on, but did anybody go to the DFIR conference that SANS was giving? Because apparently they got breached, and a lot of the information that SANS lost or ended up breaching, somebody had mentioned that it was a lot of the DFIR conference stuff that had been done online, and I didn't know if anybody had gone to that. Maybe their information had been leaked. So I do appreciate the transparency on it.
I had seen there was a leak, but I didn't know it was from the DFIR.
Well, somebody had said that. I can't verify that, but that was the data point that I'd gotten, that it came from the DFIR course or whatever that had happened. So I'm still looking, but yeah, haven't seen anything to the contrary on that. But I appreciate their transparency. They have a whole website dedicated to it and talking about what happened and play by play. So they're definitely, you know, trying to do all the right things properly. So it's important. So what's everybody working on? What's the hobbies that's been going on trying to keep yourselves, you know, sane? Anybody pick up weightlifting or anything like that, or anything cool? I just walk a lot. And I have a weight bench, but, you know, anybody doing any woodworking or metal shop or, you know?
I built a Plex media server,
Nice.
and then I installed a Plex client on my Raspberry Pi 3.
Okay.
And plugged it into the TV.
Reddit r/open directories is my Plex server, so you know I don't I don't need a Plex server. I just, you know, pull it down from open directories, so it's all good. All right, so
my toolkit just arrived, so I'm waiting for vacation to crack open the new lock picks and practice locks.
All right, I had some training picks and locks that I think I got from Tool, but I don't know what I did wrong, but I took the 1-pin lock and I futzed up the 1 pin that was in the 1-pin lock and couldn't fix it. So I ended up giving them to Wendy because, you know, she runs the lockpick village at B-Sides Las Vegas. So I was like, here's 2 sets of lock picks, you know, complex and simple. I was like, just take them, because I don't need them. I'll just break them. She's like, that's kind of the point. And I was like,
better that than a lock you're dependent on, right?
Yeah.
That's the rule goes.
Jeff,
did you want me to talk about the positions we've got open?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I am not hiring manager for any of these, but I'm happy to do the OSINT on the internal repo to find out who is for each of them.
Okay.
We have 6 or 7 positions in our security team that are looking. So we have a corporate security engineer for SecOps, and I believe all of these are open new positions, so not backfill. We have 2 security telemetry engineering positions, one remote US, Canada, the other remote Europe.
Okay.
We have a senior product security engineer. All of these, if I don't say it, they're remote US, Canada, unless like the one telemetry one is Europe.
Okay.
We have a senior corporate security for SecOps. We have a staff application security engineer. This is our first time we get to start building our red team So this one just posted like 2 hours ago. So I saw it post and I dropped it in the BreakSec channel. So that one, I know we've been talking about it the whole 3 years I've been at GitHub. So super happy that that one's coming on. And then we also have a staff product security engineer position.
Nice.
So all of these are on the website for github.com/about/careers, or just ping me in the BreakSec Slack and I'll be happy to pull them up.
Fantastic. Okay. Before we get started with Duane here, so if you're interested in talking with local people and networking between episodes of, SeaSec and SeaSec East, or, if you're a college student who may be graduating this year and are trying to network with folks that are local or global in this case, we have every time zone, I think, is as an account, at least in our Slack. So I'm posting the invite link into our chat here. Please do not give that out. I'm only giving it out to attendees of SeaSec and SeaSec East. We do have a social media social contract. We are a moderated community. We do take our bannings seriously, and we do ban people. So for breaking the social contract, we've done one just recently for an unfortunate post. So we do have a no politics policy. So take your politics, regardless of what they are, to Twitter or any of the other social medias. Ideally, we'd like to keep this as clean and professional as possible. So when you first log in, you'll see a bot that tells you what you can and can't do. Understand it's not a democracy. I have final say on pretty much whoever we decide to ban. And we definitely have a process by doing that. So we have a lot of channels. We have a book club. We just ended the AWS pen testing book that was written by Ben Caudle, who's also local to Seattle in RhinoSec. We're going to be starting something a little different. It's not technical. It's the ADKAR series. So the book on change management and how to build a proper change management bit in your organization. I'm actually going to be taking the course, and it's going to be this book here. I'm going to be taking the course on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. It's not a very long book. It's only a couple of 100 pages, and it's an easy read. My wife took the course. She got a lot out of it. I'm trying to mature our processes at Leviathan, so it seemed like it was a good fit. Also, there might be some things as a technical person you might not understand about your organization that might be useful to understand why change management works the way it does, or maybe they're not doing change management properly. You can go, hey, maybe we should be doing it this way versus another direction. So, it's not going to be overly technical. I think we had about 4.5 months of technical with the AWS pen testing stuff. So I was like, maybe we pick something a little lighter, maybe something that, would kind of extend or expand our skill sets to something other than popping shells and, checking AWS configurations and, hacking on that stuff. So I'm actually probably going to be joining that book club. We do it every Monday night on Pacific time. So if you're interested in that, you can join the Slack, go to our book club channel, and you can buy the book on Amazon and join us. And what we'll do is we'll have the Slack like what we've got here, and we'll just, read a chapter, read, 40, 50 pages and discuss that. And, we'll talk about our experiences, why you think change management sucks, why you think it's great, what are you doing in your organization, that kind of thing. So would love to see some senior leadership there. If, you've got a change management person at your org who loves talking about change management, feel free to invite them. I'd love to be able to pick their brain about some things. And I know for me as a technical PM trying to mature an organization from a startup boutique to a more larger org, because we're hiring out the ass. We're hiring a lot of people. Sorry, that was unprofessional. We are trying to make sure that our processes are mature before we become a 300-person company. So it's an interesting kind of deal, job descriptions and interesting things like that. So anyway, I digress. Duane, thank you for taking the time to come and speak. I know tonight's pizza night for y'all, and I appreciate you, taking the time to talk about your organization and how you handled, the crisis that's affecting a lot of people globally. And this is Duane Blanchard, everybody.
Well, thank you. It's been wonderful fun already. I took almost a page of notes on Micah's talk.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for giving me some of your time. I'm using two screens. One has all the floating heads, and one has my notes. I don't have any slides tonight. I just want to speak casually. I wanted to be very interactive, and I welcome questions at any point. I welcome you to challenge me. I think that as we went through all of our changes, we did a great job, but I want to learn, and if people did similar things or did things entirely differently and it worked out well, I would like to learn that as well. So I'm not selling anything. I'm not officially representing Chimeta, but I will give a quick overview of Chimeta and my role there, just because it sets the context for the rest of the talk. So Chimeta is an 8-year-old startup company in Redmond. We make electronically steerable antennas for satellite communication. They're 80 centimeters across, so they fit on cars, and that's one of our primary use cases is cars and trucks. But each antenna has a cellular modem as well as a satellite modem, and as you're driving out of cellular connectivity range, then it will automatically switch over to satellite. It's a really interesting company. There's some interesting OSINT that I did on it prior to interviewing, and yeah, so we'll just leave it at that.
Cool.
Anyway, so we're on our second phase, or our second model of satellite antennas, and the global satellite conference, SAT show, in 2020 was held in March. And that was right as we were beginning to figure out, hey, COVID is a real thing. We're gonna feel impact on that. Shall we go and announce our next generation product that we intend to launch at SAT Show 2020? If we do that, who should we send, and how many people should we send, and will there even be people there to hear the message? And so we did send people, and it was a successful launch of a sort, but timing definitely is a fickle master. So anyway, that's about Chimeta. My own role, it's a new role. It's exciting for me to hear that GitHub is expanding their team. I am the only security person full-time dedicated at Chimeta, and I'll be very transparent about that. There's a lot going on that I'm still trying to get my arms around. But I joined in January, so March was, I joined at the end of January, so I had a month before people were starting to fly out to be able to advise on that. And so the role that I'm in is I interviewed for information security, and like my previous jobs, it's also, hey, nobody's doing physical security, nobody's doing data privacy, nobody's doing customer data privacy or employee data privacy, nobody's doing investigations on if there's something that looks a little hinky from an employee internal investigation. So all of that has come to me. Physical security came to me. So I love it. I love roles like this, and I wouldn't have taken the job if I weren't open to new things that are not directly in my information security background. But that's, it was, again, timing's a fickle master to answer to. Sorry, I should back up. Brian, thanks for the introduction. You did a great job in introducing it, but I want to make sure that I frame it to help orient what I've got and help dry out some questions.
Sure, no worries.
All of you I hope that everybody's able to work from home and has safe places to do that. The talk that I've prepared is about Chimeta's decision and the process around the decision of how we're going to continue forward. As I mentioned, we design and manufacture these flat panel antennas that means that we do manufacturing. And if we have everybody work from home, that means we've stopped manufacturing. So I'm interested to hear, I know GitHub's represented by Jen, but is there anybody else here who does manufacturing or puts a physical product into the marketplace? No. All right. I started my InfoSec career at Boeing, and we obviously put physical things in the market. But I hadn't done anything, I hadn't worked for a company since then that relies on this production as their revenue. I did work at F5, but they've become much more of a software company prior to my arrival there. They still manufacture their big IP and other products, but their revenue now is based on their software. For us, not being able to produce these and not being able to sell these on the market would mean we're no longer a company. So there was a really awkward final meeting in the office, and the meeting was called to discuss. It was a continuation of other meetings we'd had, discussing COVID-19 is it's definitely here in Washington. It's reared its ugly head just 2 miles from the office at Overlake Hospital. That's where all of the people from the nursing home were being treated, and the nursing home itself was less than 2 miles from our office. But this is before there was any lockdown, any guidance from King County or from the state saying everybody stay home, shelter in place. And so as company leadership, we were meeting again, this is probably our 4th or 5th meeting to decide what is good practice. And we'd already had some people working from home that could easily do that. But this meeting was to decide, are we going to suspend manufacturing and have everybody stay home? And if we do that, how long can we afford to do that? And so that meeting was maybe 8 people, maybe 9 or 10. And as the meeting progressed, we realized we need to bring in other management and other key individual contributors to get their input on this, because the decision is leaning very heavily toward, yes, we're going to close the office for a period of time. What outstanding work orders do we have that we're contractually obligated to fulfill? Factors like that. So this largest meeting room that we had 8 or 10 people in suddenly had over 25 people. And the irony was not lost on us that we're trying to discuss social distancing by bringing more than double the number of people into this conference room that we're planning social distancing for. So it was already an awkward conversation, but it became even more awkward as we were trying to discuss personnel safety by crowding together, and none of us had masks at that time. Social distancing was still the whole message at that point. It wasn't masks yet. So before we allowed the additional group in, I raised the issue that, hey, this is going to go the opposite direction of what we want. Is there a larger room? There's not. Before we bring them in, let's make sure we know exactly the questions we're going to ask. Do we need the whole team in at once? And do we need to, how much time do we think we can do this? Can we fit this into 10 minutes and then we break? Anyway, so it went very well. We did decide, we closed the office for 2 weeks, and that gave us time to plan a reopen, a soft reopen. During that 2 weeks, fortunately, we didn't have anything that we were contractually obligated to deliver immediately. But we have some processes that are hard to shut down. And so we planned, how are we going to continue those processes? And that was one person at a time would be in each building. And one building is only ours. The other building is a shared building, but we didn't need to be in that other building at the time. But people like the routine. People like being able to go to the office and be away from family or be away from distractions at home. Not saying anybody hates their family, but it can be hard. So in that meeting, the final outcome that I wanted to drive to was, I want to disable all of the badges and prevent people from being able to be in the building. We need to communicate that out. and let's communicate that in this next session where we're going to bring in about 15 more people. So getting buy-in on that, and then starting up a process of this one person a day that's going to be able to come in to the building. How are we going to re-enable their badge? And I was able to address that. But it did raise the issue that our badging system is horrible. We are not able to, we are able to remotely enable and disable badges. We're even able to schedule this badge will be enabled at this time and we'll disable it this time. But we couldn't do it programmatically. What I envisioned was I would just create a big spreadsheet that has days and times, and I'll be able to just populate that spreadsheet by username, and I'll just run my Python that's going to automatically enable badges when they're supposed to be enabled and automatically disable badges when they're not. And that did not work. There's no API for our badging system. Another thing that so when I first joined the company, I had gone around to check all of the perimeter doors, make sure that the gap between the door and the frame is not too wide. Make sure that the bash plates are in place. It can't be loaded very easily. But then also checking the cameras. And so even though I had done that a month and a half earlier, and I knew cameras are not pointing where they needed to be at that time. Wow. It was not top priority until suddenly that day. So the last thing that I did before I left the building was reorient some of the cameras, because I do want to be able to see not only that people are not in, nobody's coattailing in, we don't have a party going on to use the big projector or anything else, but I wanted to make sure that if there is somebody gets reported walking through the parking lot and that's suspicious, I want to be able to visually check without running up to the office.
Right.
As it happened, a couple of weeks later, HR did need to be in the building for some records that they keep in the safe, and they did recognize, or they didn't recognize somebody. They saw somebody passing very close to the main entrance, kind of loitering, but not really, and there's no nature trail or anything that would account for why that person would be there. So they reported it, which is fantastic that it got reported, and I was able to look for the security footage of that, and that led to discovery that at the time, our security footage was not being recorded for all of the cameras. It was only being recorded for what somebody had determined to be key angles. So fixing that during the break, or during the pandemic, it wasn't a big challenge, but I have personal run books that when I join a new company, I run through these and make sure that the cameras are in place, that doors have locks, that all of these things. But gross oversight on my part, I had not also added to that list, make sure that the recording is set for all cameras and that it's kept for more than 72 hours. So we keep way more than 72 hours, but it was, I've been doing this for well over a decade, and I'm like, that's such a simple thing. I should have known to check that, and I didn't. So personal lesson learned for myself.
I'm imagining when you said you were rearranging the cameras before you left, that you're like turning the camera around so it's actually facing the loading dock where the smoke pit is, versus looking out into the, or something like that. How many actual cameras did you have to adjust?
Yeah.
How many were actually recording?
I had to adjust 5, and I think probably only 5 were recording, 5 different ones. Strangely, we have a giant 3D printer. It'll print a cubic meter. One of the cameras, a cubic meter is a lot of plastic.
Yes, it is.
So one of the cameras near the loading dock, but through a separate door, but it's the door I would pick if I were breaking in there. The camera for that door was actually pointed at the 3D printer, as though somebody wanted to be able to check their print job instead of walk over there from the other building. I don't know if that's true, but it points perfectly into the window where you can see, is my print job done? Is the arm still moving? And does not point at the door. You can just see the edge of the trim around the door frame.
I can pretty much guarantee that that is exactly what they were doing.
So no one has complained. Whoever pointed it, maybe they just haven't been doing any printing. When we're all back in the office and somebody starts printing, I'll find out who needs that angle. But yeah, it was exactly that. Some of them were just ajar. It was, I could slide in that door without being seen. The camera might catch that the door opens, but the motion detection on the camera may or may not catch it because it's such a small movement. One of them was pointed at the hinges of the door, not the open side of the door. So figuring that out, these are all things that I could have done beforehand if I'd had a little bit more time on the job. If I'd had another month on the job, then I think maybe I would have gotten to these before it became a matter. The person that was reported in the parking lot, I was not able to get footage to see them, so I did drive up to the office. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I walked around both buildings just checking for broken glass or any sign of forced entry on the doors. We have several vehicles that we use to test the cameras, to test the antennas, and all of the doors were unlocked for all of the cars. One of the cars, looking through the window, I could see what used to be our default password. We no longer have a default password, but it was written on a Post-it note on the dashboard.
Of course.
So, yeah.
It's the version of the, under the keyboard thing,
Right. That's right.
Well, now the thing about the hinges for the door, I did just get a question about our data centers and whether they had external hinges for things. So maybe that is a thing.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So all of our doors open inward into our office spaces. We do have some on the exterior. I guess all exterior doors have to open outward for fire safety. So yeah, that's definitely an issue. And I do still as an outstanding item, please nobody go break into Chimeta. But some of the motion detection for cameras, I've not yet validated that this really works. I can't test it right now because we don't have people at the office available to do the testing. And if I go up there, my arm gets tired carrying my laptop as I go through doors all over the buildings. So I want to go back to that meeting where we were all crammed in a room. We dismissed the extra people that we'd brought in and wanted to come up with a quick idea of what we would get back to. So we decided in that meeting that we would divide each of the teams that needs to be in the office. So we've got radio frequency design engineers that need access to equipment. We've got test engineers that need access to equipment. Manufacturing and assembly people need access to equipment. What we decided to do in that meeting as just a trial is divide those teams in half, and each team would send half of the people into the office for a 2-week period, and then we would swap. So the A team, not meaning that one team's better than the other, but team A would go into the office and do hands-on work, and they would work long hours, 10, 12-hour shifts, trying to keep up with everything. Then after 2 weeks, they would get 2 weeks off. They would, keep up on email and other stuff, but get some rest, spend time with your family, and then after those 2 weeks, you're back on the clock. And that has worked out really well. We've been able to keep up with our production goals for the most part. I think that we are back up now, but we had a little bit of time left. We were a little bit behind for a period of time. I anticipate that some teams will want to continue doing that, the 2 weeks on and 2 weeks vacation. That sounds really appealing to me. My work is not such that I can do that, but anyway, so the other aspect of that, we had a CTO at the time who was brilliant. Rob, can't remember his last name. Should give him a shout out. But Rob pointed out that we will need to have frequent communications with all of the different team leadership. And how are we going to do that? We were still using Zoom at the time, or not Zoom, Skype for Business. and we were just transitioning onto MS Teams. And so we started these bi-weekly meetings. To be clear, we were meeting twice weekly over Microsoft, sorry, the old tool that I just said the name of. Before we moved on to Teams, we would meet Tuesday night and Thursday night and get input from each team's lead or each team's manager, asking, how are your people doing? Are people fatiguing? Are people being safe in the office? You know, keeping distance, wearing their masks, etc. Because we did start, you know, we had that short period where we'd have one person in each building at a time, and then very quickly we did end up splitting the teams. And it was interesting because we got, you know, I was still new to the company at this point. I still feel quite new, but people were quite outspoken about how they were feeling in the office. They were open to saying, I'm nervous having this many people around the office. I'm nervous having to walk by this workstation while I'm on my way to this room to do this thing because there's already people at that workstation. And especially then, you know, as little as we understand about COVID-19 now, we understood way less in early April, mid-April. And it was really gratifying to see that we already had a company culture where people could confidently share their opinion. They didn't feel like that may be endangering them or showing, exposing that they're not fully on board with this new plan. I think that's a key thing for all of us to take away, either at at our current companies or at companies we go to in the future. We don't have control over the whole company, but we do have control over our teams and the people that we work with, building that sense of security, that sense of safety that people can express themselves and share concerns. If you're not already living in an environment where you get to do that, it's really powerful. And you know, hit me up later, or at the end here, we can talk about how do you build cultures like that. I'm not an expert in it, but it's definitely worth the discussion. Time's going on. I do want to pause if anybody has questions about what we've covered so far.
I found it interesting, all the physical security requirements that were not in place. You said you're the only security guy. Who put all that you know, the badging and the camera, right, all that stuff in? If you were the first security guy, or was it security people before and they just left and they didn't hire?
No, IT was tasked with doing security cameras, and that had come from HR, which I think is very sensible. You know, I anticipate there's never been, or I expect there's never been assault charges or anything else levied against anyone at the company. But if there ever were, then you definitely want cameras on place. But even if it's a workplace accident, being able to see, hey, yeah, the steps were icy or whatever issue, having camera is a very sensible thing for HR to want in place. So HR tasked IT to contract that out. So the contractor did the installation. And possibly they did a great job initially, and they're just not cared for. So IT handed it off to facilities. We have a single facilities person, and he's great, but he's overwhelmed with plenty of work, just like I'm overwhelmed with plenty of my work. He had actually talked to HR about, hey, we're not using these cameras for anything. We've never had an occasion to review the footage. Can we just pull them out? Because I'm not able to maintain them. Right. And they approved that. It went to IT to have them uninstalled, and IT just sat on the ticket. That they knew better than to do that, but they also didn't want to argue about it. So it wasn't costing anything. It wasn't licensed in some way. And so they just sat on it. And that's really fortunate for me that they're still in place. Some of them do need to be replaced. They're just old enough, the resolution's poor and other factors. Some don't have motion sensing capability. So they're set right now to just record everything, but for a shorter period of time than the others. So I think that answered your question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But also the badge readers, I don't know where those came from. But yeah, it was good that they already had badge readers in place. There are some really great solutions now for programmatic access to badge readers, and some that I investigated when this was fresh back in April have touchless entry. So you just wave your hand nearby and it's doing an RFID just on your body. You don't have to badge. So some cool stuff out there, but I spent maybe half a week looking at all these solutions and then determining that we're not gonna be able to upgrade anything at that point anyway.
Yep. So Mark has a couple of questions. He's like, how do you to work for those who aren't in the office so they can still add value, like remote consultations, mentoring, etc. And this one is kind of interesting, and I would like to know that too, because Leviathan's became more geographically disparate. Do you have a central source for documentation, or what you're doing to ensure that you're documenting all of your processes, for new people, or for making sure the work is being done, especially since you said a team A and a team B. Does team B know team A's information and vice versa?
Right. Excellent questions. So yeah, let's start with documentation. In that last awkward meeting we had on site, there was an imperative to really have clear communications, and part of clarity meant, if this is something best described verbally, then do that. If it's something best written down, because it's going to need to go to a lot of people at different times, do that. So we do have SharePoint, we do have a wiki, we do have Teams is where a lot of things are being documented now. Then we also have a ticketing system, and the company culture has always been work happens in tickets. So if it's something that needs work and it needs to be tracked, that's a ticket. Documentation almost always has been in the wiki. And then presentations and reporting have usually been in SharePoint. So great that the culture already fostered that. About a week after we closed the office, from the senior leadership team, the C-level, there was a lot of encouragement to over-communicate. And that phrase, over-communicate, to me is that you've already gone too far. You've over-communicated. And there was, beginning about a week after we closed the office, my meeting load doubled. And, speaking to other people across the company, we had about double the number of meetings. And, the very same questions were coming up in 3 or 4 different meetings a day. And it was impactful to the business to have over communication. So we're better now. But it's also, I think part of it is having moved on to Teams instead of using Skype for Business. People are able to keep notes there, and it's a better workflow for people to be able to catch up on what's been discussed and follow up, and then also just adding notes to each ticket as work is getting done. So that's helped the team A and the team B. I see this about using the Wi-Fi radius accounting. That's an awesome idea. Thank you, Jeff, for that idea. Necessity is the babysitter of invention. So I'm catching up here. There was another question that you raised, and I don't remember what it was, but I haven't answered it yet.
How are you helping those who are doing manufacturing type jobs, who are at home for a week that can't be hands-on?
Right. So as with every company, there are processes and functionalities and such that are undocumented. So that's something that those teams have been working on. We're still doing this team A and team B activity now. When you're on the team that's not in the office, document the processes, document the functionalities, intended functionalities, try and pay down all of the technical debt that we can during this time. And so somebody put Rob Strickland in, that is the one. That must have been you, Brian.
Yep.
So yeah, he was contract CTO for us. And I only got to overlap with him for a couple of months, but I really admired his style and his leadership his guidance was really good, especially in this time that was very difficult. He's still involved, but less day to day, more periodic. So yeah, paying down the technical debt was his suggestion that, this is an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity in disguise. And what are the things that we can do while we're not doing everything else? Paying down technical debt was right at the top of his mind. And we never really stopped to measure how much technical debt do we have and how much do we think we can pay down. We just started going into it and leaving up to each individual contributor to figure out, this is the technical debt that bothers me the most, and it's the one that I'm going to fix first, and this is how much fix I'm going to give it before I move on to the next thing. The recognition to externalize knowledge give rise to any feelings, fears, threats of folks' positions. No, not that I'm aware of. The meetings that we've had every 2 weeks, those are hosted by HR, and they've been very sensitive to how are your people feeling and helping understand. One of our key investors made special point to meet with us and assure us that that backing is secure, and that we are that no positions are being looked at for termination or downsizing, move to part-time or anything else. That was very nice for everybody to get that message. Trying to think what else. There's been a lot of HR's done a really great job just reaching out to everybody. Everybody who has any reason to be in the office goes through a process where they do contact HR to say, here's the day and the time that I want to be in the office. Here's my manager's approval, and here's the work that I'll be doing. I expect it will take this amount of time, and then I'll be out. So we are still disabling and re-enabling badges, and that I've been able to give that work to HR, and they've given that to the administrative staff, the front desk staff, and that was a key thing. The front desk staff did worry. I work the front desk. What am I going to do from now on? So they did have some documentation and some training that they needed to catch up on, but being able to transition some of this badge management work to them has been huge for me, and it's certainly not enjoyable work for them, but it's given them meaningful work. So that's an excellent question.
Has this given rise to any, do you ever have brainstorming sessions to think of ways to not just continue working remotely, but to leverage the current products that Chimeta creates to, build new business lines or new business areas? Yeah.
Yes to both, but more to the latter. We continue to discuss in my staff meetings and other large team meetings, what can we do to continue to eke out some opportunity here, and part of that is opportunity for sales. I don't remember which school district it was. I think it was in Georgia. Their school buses already had an LTE router, so they're giving Wi-Fi to kids on the school bus through LTE. And at the beginning of COVID, when schools were going into lockdown, they just drove the buses into neighborhoods that didn't have, the less affluent neighborhoods where families, either they knew a specific family that wouldn't have Wi-Fi at home, or a neighborhood that was unlikely to have Wi-Fi for everybody. And they made that Wi-Fi available not only to the students, but also to the neighborhoods, the parents and others. And for those kids, that meant they get to continue attending school, where otherwise they couldn't go to the library. Libraries were closed. They couldn't go to a coffee shop. Coffee shops were closed. So looking at, we have Chimeta's market up to this point has kind of been DOD, MOD, Ministry of Defense, and other governments, and then fleet management, moving companies that have trucks that are going all over the countryside or all over the world, and are frequently in and out of, excuse me one second. I'm on a call.
Sorry.
That's my son.
Saw your background. I couldn't see anything, but
okay.
we almost had a reenactment of that European or the English call where the kid comes in, he's like this, you know.
Yep, exactly. So we are looking at more what are some opportunities to do good in the world, and what are some opportunities to test in environments that we don't normally consider as a part of our market space.
That's pretty awesome.
That's an excellent question.
You mentioned Georgia and the school buses. We had April Murdoch on here talking a few months ago about the issues with just getting Wi-Fi and large equipment disbursements to students for school as part of the Seattle public school system. And then we had her on the podcast talking about school security and ransomware and all that. Not saying that that's a business line for y'all, but yeah, I could definitely see kinds of things, especially if the buses, I'm assuming in Georgia, were like, for the whole block or something like that. So everybody should have an internet connection. So that's kind of cool.
Yep. Thank you.
No.
Are there any questions that I've overlooked?
Mark had one. He said, what's the single largest impediment being to going semi-remote?
Yeah. Probably not being able to have full staff in the manufacturing teams. That's like I said, we've been able to keep up, but it's been draining on those teams to be able to manage that. It's also been an opportunity for them to look at their workflow. Pardon me. How they do their testing, how they do their so we have these large room-sized RF chambers that are that they allow no outside radio frequency in or out. So they're not just a Faraday cage, but they are like a Faraday silent room. I don't know if you've been to a recording studio that's like perfectly silent.
Like an anechoic.
It's like that for RF.
Okay.
So we have several of these chambers, and they're constantly full because each individual antenna has to be tuned to get the best performance. And that's been kind of a long process, multiple hours, and trying to figure out new approaches to doing the tuning. So there's definitely been pain, but I think the pain has led to better processes and has led to equal or I'm trying to think of a case where it's actually been better. I think my productivity is better because I don't have my commute. It's about 45 minutes or more each way.
Yep. I was driving.
But Brian mentioned that we live nearby each other. I first met Brian online. He was living in Austin, and I was considering moving to Austin. And so I looked up the Austin OWASP group and any other security group I could find there. I just emailed and said, hey, I'm from Seattle. I'm looking to move to Austin. This is what I like to do security-wise. Anyone know any open positions? And Brian was the only person from Austin to write back. Thank you for that. So I ended up not moving. And then it was probably more than a year later, my daughter met a kid in the neighborhood. And I was asking this new kid that I hadn't met before, where are you from? Austin. Oh, what do your parents do? She said that her dad was a hacker. I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. What, do you know who he works for? She's like, no, it's computer stuff. And anyway, I got to meet Brian. It turned out that he was the same Brian that I'd met online. Very coincidentally, lives down the street from me.
Very small world. Very small.
It is.
Cool.
So I haven't covered network security yet. As I said, it was a new role, and I was the only security person on the team. Without being able to grow a team, I did want to bring in a managed security service provider So we have signed on with Rapid7 for managed detection and response for a variety of reasons that we can get into if people have time, but I recognize it's now after 9. That helps me sleep at night. And that was, in my interview process, speaking to, if we're not going to grow a team this year, then I need this, and what funding is available for that. I just didn't anticipate that it would be the same conditions that we're under now, where I have more time. The time that I'm not commuting, I do spend working. So I have more work time during the day, but I have, without these tools in place, I would have even less visibility, and it would be harder for me to be able to trace things down, just because it's hard for me to qualify that. When I was in the office, I was able to more easily just reach across the cubicle and ask, hey, I've got this weird thing that I don't know how to do. And somebody on the IT team would be able to tell me about their environment more, or about users. Yeah, that's typical behavior for this user because of this condition or the situation. They do work bizarre hours because that's when the RF chamber is available, or whatever thing. So I still get that support, but it's maybe not as quick as what it was then. But having detection capabilities for host-based and network-based detection, that's something we didn't have before, and detection's a must, as we say. Email security, I did want to cover the user training, user security training. Prior to my joining, they were already phishing their own users, but they were just using the standard collection of phish emails that our platform provides. And with this over communication and this directive to over communicate everything, I knew that if I send out emails about security, that they would just be lost in the noise. So what I did was switched away from the stock canned emails and started doing more targeted emails. If I were a real adversary targeting Chimeta, what would be hot? And it was probably late April, maybe early May. Another satellite company filed bankruptcy. And so I wrote up a press release about that company going bankrupt, and that Chimeta is likely to follow suit because of the same factors, which was a total lie. But I got nearly 90% click-throughs, and it's if I had just sent out a security message about, hey, everybody, please remember to make sure doors shut behind you. Please be sure to do these things. That was a much more productive way to get people talking about security. I absolved everybody of that first. You automatically get signed up for new training through the platform. So I absolved everybody of that training requirement, but I did let them know from now on, these are going to be more realistic emails. They won't be so easily recognized as phish, but there will still be some obvious tells. They won't be obvious, but you've been through all the training already, and so you'll just need to apply that training. It will be less obvious. Mark asks, as a result, what would the future landscape look like? Is remote work now on the table at my org? Has the C-suite shared their observations with the rest of the team with regard to remote? I don't think we've heard anything from the C-suite. I was out for, I didn't attend one of the all hands meetings because I had some other stuff to deal with. But yes, remote work is definitely here to stay for Chimeta. Prior to this, there'd always been lip service to, yeah, we believe in people being able to work from home a day or two a week. But then when requests came in, it's like, well, we really need you in the office. And again, that was all before I joined the company. It didn't change because I joined the company, but circumstantially, it's different now. And people have definitely been able to prove we are at least as productive as when we're in the office for many roles. And for those roles that do need to be in the office, if you're not doing that part of that work, if you're doing emails or trainings or research that you can do from home, feel free to do that. what the future landscape looks like, Microsoft has discussed that they're going to break their leases on some buildings and stuff like that. We're not going to do that. We'll still maintain the same volume of space, but I do think that some of the spaces will change. The clean room that we have may expand so that we can have more distance between people. We have a large unused space that could be used for people who, we do have people requesting, I just want to come into the office because I'm tired of being at home. And that's, for a while we had a limit on how many people could be in the office at a given time. I don't know, I missed the last HR meeting to know if we still have that. Let me see.
Sorry, I was just making a comment. You'd mentioned that Microsoft was breaking lease on buildings. They just announced that they were spending $1 billion on renovating, their campus and creating this open office / community kind of thing where they're putting 8 people in really close proximity. And now this has just blown that all to hell.
Yeah.
Now you've got organizations that, want to spread out. So, everybody who's, cramped in one space, you may go back to offices. We may go back to, we may go back to having 4 floors instead of 2 because, we used to be able to pack more people into a developer space. So it's kind of interesting the paradigm shift all of a sudden back.
Yeah. I will share, for the time being, for the foreseeable future, even if you are working in your own individual office at our campus, you are still required to wear a mask. One thing that we did not anticipate that would lead to is dehydration. People were wearing their masks all day and not drinking any fluids. So the current policy is wear your mask all the time, except when you're eating or drinking. And the company did buy picnic tables to go outside so that people could go eat without being in the building. And that also, we wanted to encourage people to take breaks during the day and not just be at work. Especially if you're one doing a 10, 12-hour shift, don't just work that whole time. Take breaks. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself, eating and drinking as well.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's very good. Mental health and physical health. Getting out and having a little sunshine while we can. So
right.
Cool.
Yeah, Mark, I like your comment. I don't remember. I think it was on, I don't know, somewhere, Twitter, Reddit, somewhere. Yep. Somebody had posed the question. We're all excited to go relaunch the economy and go back to our 9-to-5 jobs and do that. But what if we don't? That would be okay with me if I continue to work from home lots of days of the week and I don't drive my car as far and I don't spend as much on gas and I don't do these things that really don't add any value. So yeah, I anticipate I'll be in the office no more than 1 day a week. And that day I will try to plan all of my meetings with people in person. But I'm waiting, individually, personally, I'm waiting on a vaccine before I go back to the office. There was some expectation that people would all come together for a staff meeting. It wasn't the whole company, but a group that I was part of wanted to have an in-person staff meeting. And again, that culture of being able to say, we don't think that's a good idea. I'm going to dial in. So make sure there's a dial in bridge for that. I wasn't the one who did it, but there were already, before it came around my turn to weigh in on it, several people had already said, I'm not doing that. I don't feel that that's a smart decision. I don't feel safe doing that. And it's just really powerful. I've worked at companies with horrible cultures, and I've worked with, this is one of the best cultures that I've worked at.
That's cool.
So, I would jump in there and say, this is the greatest opportunity we have been afforded in 100 years, with regards to folks that see it as an opportunity versus some sort of liability. So for those that are bold and brave enough to actually embrace it, this is a chance to fix a lot of things that we would have never gotten the political will to fix prior. Because this didn't emanate from any particular individual. This is something that's bigger than any one individual or power structure. So It's
Yeah.
really important that everybody like makes a case, a sound case, and advocates for remote as at least an option,
Yep.
so that we can actually get back to being our best, reaching our true potential without wasting ourselves in commutes and rush hour and polluting the planet and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. And I don't want to turn to politics, but single payer healthcare or a national healthcare option. I don't want it to be mandated for anybody, but healthcare in the United States is a thing. And what a great opportunity to build support to improve overall healthcare for all people. So,
Right on.
yeah.
Did anybody else have any other questions? I don't know how much more did you have, Duane? Are you almost done?
No, that covered it. I wanted to cover the training opportunity by fishing. That went super well.
Cool.
We did get a lot of fish, as everyone did, about COVID-related topics.
Right.
So I did send out emails periodically, just letting people know, hey, these are the hot topics, and just like in April, taxes will be hot, and everything else, just continue to apply good judgment.
Nice. Cool. Okay. Well, Duane, I appreciate you giving us insights into how y'all are doing things. I know it's very different than most companies here. Most people with software, it's like, well, I'm working at home.
Yeah.
3 days a week, I'm just going to do it for 2 more or whatever. I know that a lot of people are used to being in offices, so it is kind of different, even if you are, a technology company. I know my wife is having to learn how to work at home because she's very much an in-the-office person. And I have other folks that work at Leviathan. They're like, man, I miss being in the office. I wish I had my office.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has a, BreakSec World headquarters. They don't have a dedicated space, so sometimes it's very difficult. So I appreciate hearing the insights of your organization, and you're on our Slack. You're also on Twitter. How can people find you on Twitter if they wanted to talk to you there?
I am not on Twitter. I don't do the tweets. I read periodically, but not very much. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on the Slack channel, and I'm on LinkedIn, and those are both pretty reliable ways to reach me. LinkedIn is probably more reliable than BreakSec, or than the BreakSec Slack. I'm just not in Slack as often as I check for message on LinkedIn.
No, it's okay.
So,
it's all right.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to attending more often. This has been really fascinating.
Right on.
Micah's talk was great.
Yeah, our next meeting will be on the 2nd of September. We'll go back to the first Wednesday of every month. We are looking for a speaker or two. I can understand with it being a short month because we're in the second Wednesday of the month. So I only have about 2 weeks to find a speaker at least. So if anybody has any interesting, discussions, anything from leadership, like what Duane was talking about, and, technical challenges all the way up to popping shells and talking about the latest Python libraries, I'm all in on that stuff. And I'm sure we can find you an audience and a crowd to talk about that. So if you've got any AppSec folks or software development, or, you just want to talk about the latest CTF you got involved with, hit me up. Would love to have you carve out 45 minutes to talk about that. Yeah.
You mentioned the book club. What night does that meet?
Well, we were talking about Monday night, but a couple of our moderators said it was like Scout night or something. They're doing virtual.
Okay.
So we may move it to Tuesday. I don't want to put it on Friday or Saturday. It's a little odd. So, maybe a Tuesday night. Like I said, it's a very short book, so I don't expect it to take very long. The other one that we did with AWS pen testing was like 800 pages, and it took forever. Yeah. So I was like, maybe we do something a little shorter, maybe a little not so technical. I also suggested maybe something like the virus that killed people book. I forget which one it is. It's a thriller, one of the hacker thriller books. I thought maybe somebody would want to do something like that instead. So, but yeah, I think this is what we're going to do, only because, I'll have gone through the class. The certification test is not hard, but Sandworm, that's it. Thank you, Mark. We could always do this one and then do Sandworm or something like that if somebody wants to do, more, less technical or less, managerial and more like Hunt for Red October kind of stuff. So Ha. Anyway, so yeah, cool. Thank you everybody for hanging out and staying and
Yeah.
getting involved and just being there and interacting with people. I know a lot of people don't get a lot of human interaction when they're working at home either. So yeah, it's good we can do this. So.
All right, everybody be well. Stay safe.
Yep, stay safe, everyone. Have a good night. Later, y'all.
Yep. Good night.
All right, later.
Nice to meet all of you.
Yep.
Nice to see you, Duane.
Thanks. Good to see you, Jen.
Hi, Jen.